So if I can distract you long enough from your sheets in front of you as you go through panic mode, let's bow our heads for prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for your creative abilities and your healing abilities. We thank you for all that you've done for us and are going to do for us, and will continue to ask your blessing upon us not only today and every day in all that we do. Bless us in our discussion here today, we ask in your name. Amen. So, yesterday there was some very keen competition. And that was actually a good thing. It was not rivalry, it was just straight fun competition. A few things that we will be having happen this week will be on a different level with activities that you do. There'll be much more team-oriented cooperation things. They have to be, or there will be failure. And there's a point to all of this. As we go through this, you'll start to understand it. So as you look at what you have in front of you, we're going to tag team here today. Donnelly will be starting with her part of the presentation. You'll be dodging around on there. You can write notes, whatever you have to do. And then I will go through some of the stuff that you did yesterday as well. And then we have two more things for you to fill out. Remember I said there will be questions. We will get the answers from you, and then you will get the results tomorrow. And this keeps going on through the week. So in an endeavor to try to understand this better, I want to share with you just a couple Bible verses to start. Because a lot of the things that we do probably revolve around food and eating. God gave us the ability of taste. I'm going to be very curious how that is in heaven. I don't think we have absolutely really any idea. But Christ had a meal at Levi's house. They don't talk an awful lot about eating in the Bible, but they do talk about the social aspect of it, which is really important. We grow a pretty big garden, bigger than we should, because we clearly don't need it. But we also live right by a walking trail. And the amount of people that we've been able to give food to that go on that walking trail builds incredible relationships with these people. And I think to us that becomes important. And eating was a great part of Christ's life. Now let's look at the other side of this. If you find honey, eat just enough. Too much of it, you will vomit. So honey is good. Honey is used for a lot of things. Some honeys are used very effectively for treating infections, internally and externally. I've seen it work on the outside of the body on cuts. It is great, but eating too much of it, your triglyceride lipids are going to go crazy. So the Bible is right on this. It's not like confusing at all. Now, depending on which version of the Bible you read, of course, this says it's in some Bibles says this is dealing with sexual immorality, this next verse, but it really deals with everything, because I have the right to do anything you say. You say, but not everything is beneficial. I have the right to do anything, but I will not be master of me. In other words, we cannot let food, exercise, lifestyle be our master. So I want to publicly thank Brian. We would not be functioning very well here without him. He is just a key element to working with us here. So here's the group overview in case you didn't know how old you were and how many people were here yesterday, because you guys went out to the highways and byways and started to pull them in here. It was a little bit like all of a sudden there's another person, because you got to do the hand grip strength, and you got to find out if you can actually read that sign at the back there. So there were 13 females with an average of 54.4 age. So considering that, I always hate giving you averages. This is a mean average. This is not a median or a mode. Mode being the most frequent, median being the middle score. This is the average of all of them. The males, 6 of them, you can have one outlier that's high in age, can make that score go crazy if you only have 6 people. So that age is 64.5 average for the 6 males, but the average is 57.6. So does that particularly matter? It only matters in the fact that some of these things that you did are very age specific. For instance, hand grip strength. But BMI is not. Body mass index is not. So, and some are gender specific, some are not. Some are ethnic specific, some are not. So Donnelly, you're going to talk about the weight evaluation here. You can use this if you want. Okay, thanks.
So I just discovered we actually had 20 people, and one person took theirs with them, so they're going to bring it back for us. No problem. We'll get that worked out. But it's a nice number of people. So I got the fun part to start with here. And you'll find some of this actually quite interesting. As you look at your charts, you might want to write some notes to give yourself some ideas of how this works. Yeah, we have a few pens here. So we also went through and looked at the body mass index for this particular group. And we wanted to remind you again that this is not age or gender related, but we'll look at some of these, what happened here actually. So the mean average for the females is 29.5 for a BMI score. The males, the mean average was 34.4, okay? So the combined, which generally we shouldn't probably do, but we did anyway for curiosity, and that became 31, the mean average. So we'll look at this again, but look at it now, but I'll have a better chart for you to see what the range is. So we're looking at greater than 25 is considered overweight, greater than 30 is considered obese, okay? But let's look at this a little more carefully, okay? Because sometimes if you look at your chart and you say, what? That is where I'm labeled? Like, what in the world here? But when we look at the range in a moment, you'll find maybe you're just, 1 or 2 points beyond the overweight, or 1 or 2 points beyond, where it's considered normal for you, okay? Notice here it says a useful measurement of overweight and obesity, okay? Useful means that it's useful for the majority of people, but for those that are over 18 only. If it's under 18, it's not particularly useful for a BMI score. Also, people that are pregnant or lactating, women that are pregnant or lactating, it's not a very useful score for them either, which would make sense, right? Okay. And notice the next one, I underlined estimate. It's an estimate of body fat, okay? So the reason it's an estimate is because we may be overestimating your score, because maybe you have an athletic build, maybe you're a bodyweight, you're a bodybuilder. Well, then the score is going to be different because your measurements are large, but your fat isn't large. It's the muscle mass that is making the measurement, okay? And also it may underestimate the body fat in people that are older people, because older people have body changes, okay? And some people maybe have lost muscle, okay? So it underestimates what the score actually is. So this is just an estimate, just an estimate. There's lots of other different ways to look at this, okay? But on the other hand, if that's all you have, it's still a good gauge of what maybe your risks actually are, okay? So I just put this up in case there were a few people that came today that didn't see what we did and how you do it. And some of you maybe would have had this done or knew about it anyway, but just to remind you how it was done. And part of the reason why people don't do BMI very much is because it's kind of a complicated, way to find your score. Measurements maybe aren't so bad, but to try to figure out what the BMI is. So there are different ways to figure out the BMI. So I ended up getting some of these. It's a little thing that you just line up one thing with the other, and then you can find your BMI. This is actually for Florida Hospital, okay? And then there's something like this that's called a nomogram, and then you have a straight edge, and you figure out where the weight is and where the height is, and you match it up, and then where it crosses, where it intersects, is actually what your score would be. But it's much easier to do the easy calculation and just go on the internet and go to a BMI calculator. You put the score in and it just spits it out for you, and you don't have to think. That's my style. So that makes it a little bit easier if you want to do it that way, okay? So I want you to look at your score, okay? And what I want you to notice is that this is a white North American population score, okay? So that's what's on your evaluation. So the researchers started with that population to come up with this idea of how to measure the fat in a person, okay? And so that's what the numbers ended up being. Well, since then, there's been more research and more information on different populations. But let's look at this one particularly first, then I'll show you the range of scores for other ethnic groups, and then if you fit in that, you can write that down for yourself instead, okay? So the BMI score, you'll see some ranges here. So over 30 is considered obese. So if you're just barely over 30, well, you don't have much to go to bring it back down, okay? Overweight is a range, okay, 25 to 30 basically. Healthy weight is considered in that green area, okay, 18.5 to 24.9, in that range. Underweight, of course, we have to think about underweight too. We'll look at that in a moment. So what are the risks if you end up with a high BMI score or a higher BMI score than the healthy weight one? Okay, the things we're looking at is heart disease, hypertension, heart and blood vessel diseases, type 2 diabetes, gallstones even, okay, gallbladder disease, osteoarthritis, breathing problems, certain types of cancers, okay? Now look at this chart and pay attention to, you see where the 30 is, and you'll see above it, it says white, so that's the white population, okay? So if you are a different ethnic group that would be there, Black, Arab, Chinese is different, and South Asian is even different. And if you think about it, and if you've traveled, or if you have friends of these ethnicities, you'll notice that they are slenderer than us. And so if you're looking at the idea of having a health risk, they could have a health risk sooner with a BMI that's less than my BMI, and nobody told them. So maybe they're at risk of diabetes, but, well, they're in the normal range, okay? So this is why we really need to pay attention. If you're thinking of doing something in your community, make sure you find the stats and make sure you have that available for people so that you can help them determine their health risks sooner than your own health risks. Okay, so look at those and understand. So some of the reasons for the ethnic groups is genetic differences, of course, environmental differences, so depending on what kind of environments they grew up in or live in, and lifestyle factors. Okay, so some ethnicities eat way healthier than we are, even if they live in North America. Okay, so it just gives you some idea. Okay, now what about the BMI scores that are are low. So sometimes we're thinking about the fact that if it's high, it's a problem. If it's low, great. Well, for this one, low is not, okay? So anything that's below 18.5, then we have very significant health risks also. Compromised immune system is significant, anemia, diarrhea, cessation of a menstrual cycle for women, respiratory diseases, digestive diseases, cancer, osteoporosis, okay? So it isn't, you don't want to try to get it as low as possible, okay? You want to be in that normal, healthy weight range, okay? Okay, the next one we'll look at is waist measurement in your section there in your chart. So let's look at what our group ended up with. The average for the females is 94 centimeters or 37 inches. That's the average where we're at, okay? And the average for the males is 110.5 centimeters, okay? So when you think back on waist, then let's look at what that means. Oh, sorry. Risk areas, remember, is 35 or more. And for males is 40 inches or more. Again, this is North American white population information. Okay, so those of you, again, that weren't here, so it just shows how to actually measure for the waist. And you start at the top of the hip bone, measure all the way around, about level with the belly button, and you suck in your stomach. So part of the reason we're doing that is, or I should say the main reason for doing that, is we're wanting to get the measurement of the fat that's deep in the belly, not this fat that's just hanging out here, okay? That's bad enough as it is, okay? But we're trying to get the fat that's way in deep because that actually is the dangerous one, okay? They both maybe are, but really if you can get that measurement, then you have a little bit better idea of what you're looking at and how you want to deal with it, okay? So that was how we did that. Okay, and let's look at the numbers. So I included the whole chart here. So you notice the first one is the North American one. That's what's on your chart. That's how we rated you. But if you're a different ethnic group, you'll look down, European, Sub-Saharan, African, just look all of those. And if you fit in one of those, then change the number to be what it should be for you. So you see men and women again are different. And so it gives you an idea of what if we put needs improvement, then it's because we went with the North American one, okay? Notice this one I have on the end at the left. This is a kind of a cool, easy calculation if you're not really into doing the other stuff. Just try to make sure that your waist measurement is less than half your weight. I'm sorry, half your height. So how high are you? Make sure your waist is less than half of that, okay? Okay, what are the problems with a large waist measurement? This is a bit of the scary part, so it's something that would hopefully motivate you to do something about it. Risk of dying prematurely is nearly double with a large waist measurement, okay? We have higher risk of type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, heart disease, heart attacks, and stroke, okay? So interesting, we could be in a good weight range for our body type, but we still might have a big waist measurement. That's not a good thing. Okay, so you can see why we want to do several types of measurements to consider what is your risk for disease. Okay, let's go with waist to hip ratio. Okay, what is our group? Females, the mean average was 0.88 or high risk, so that's something we need to consider. Males, the mean average was 0.98 or moderate risk. Okay, so when we're looking at the statistics here of what the risks are, for females it's 0.81 or higher, and for males it's 0.86. Okay, and you'll see the chart in a moment here. Okay, so we're wanting to make sure that we're looking at, this is just showing again how we did it, or how we did the measurement for those that weren't here. So we're trying to see what is the excess weight that's putting us at risk. So if you do several measurements, it's helpful. In a 2021 study, apple-shaped body, so that's more weight around the midsection here, okay, may be at a higher risk of heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and premature death, more so than a pear-shaped body, which is more weight around the hips and thighs down here. So that's why this measurement can be fairly accurate. And actually, let me also mention that the waist and the waist to hip measurements are actually more accurate for risk of disease than BMI. So if you're going to do anything, do these two and don't worry about the BMI and just go with the risk factors for these two. Okay? So sometimes the BMI is in moderate range, but our risk of disease is greater than what it would indicate on BMI because of shape of our body. So that's why we need that waist and hip measurement. Our son Jordy is a nurse anesthetist in the United States. And so he is telling us stories from time to time. And he mentioned that, of course, he's in the surgery room, right? Okay. Overweight people have a significantly compromised surgical procedure and recovery time. Okay. So if you have to go in for surgeries for some reason, and you are in the sections that are more at risk, you're going to have a little bit more trouble recovering and maybe more compromised in the procedure. He also mentioned that smoking patients in surgery have 4 times the risk of negative outcomes. That doesn't sound very good, does it? So if you have some friends that are going into surgery, he said, that are smokers, he said, if you can at least get them to stop smoking 48 hours before the surgery, which of course is recommended by their physicians anyway, but really help them to do that, it actually significantly improves their outcomes and their time of recovery. So even just 48 hours, isn't that amazing? Doesn't take them back to the level of a non-smoker risk. Of course, any surgery is a risk, right? But it significantly reduces that risk. So something to think about to help friends and neighbors of yourselves, okay? Another interesting thing we have to pay attention to is, again, under 18, it's difficult, and people that are, women that are pregnant and lactating, okay? This is also, we have to think about our age population we did here, okay? So it may not be as accurate a score because our bodies change as we age, okay? So we have to think about doing several measurements again on that. People that are in trauma or have some kind of trauma thing happening, their waist to hip ratio is a big indicator of how many complications they'll have. Isn't that interesting? Okay, so if a person ends up in emergency, they may not do a waist to hip measurement, but they're, you know, once you do enough of these, you can kind of just look at a person, you kind of know, right? Okay, well, even if you haven't, you can kind of figure it out. Okay, so what happens is they're going to work a little harder because they recognize there's going to be more complications. So it's a big indicator for that, something to think about. Okay, let's go with the ratio chart. Okay, so we have low, moderate, high. So in your chart, what I should have done actually is put this kind of chart in there so you would know, but this is where you'll just kind of look at that. So depending if you're at the moderate or high score especially increased risk of heart disease, hypertension, cancer, stroke, early death, diabetes. So they all kind of fit together, don't they? Okay, so it gives you this idea of where it is. There's some interesting research that shows that if we track our measurement, these measurements on a monthly basis, it actually does a better job of us lowering them. Okay, so it's actually a better motivator than me telling you you should do it. Isn't that interesting? So I'll just tell you a bit of my story. I've been tracking my weight. I think I'm going to start tracking my waist measurement and maybe my hip to waist, but especially my waist measurement on a monthly basis. I'm not going to do BMI. I'm just going to do the three, the weight and the two other measurements. Okay, I've been tracking my weight for probably about 5 years now, and I find that that really is a motivator, because before we came here, I was looking at what my weight was. I was, oh my goodness. So I thought, well, what was I last year at this time? And I looked back and said, okay, I have some work to do. I want to get down that few pounds that I was last year at this time. Because as we get older, we just start gaining weight. And if we're not tracking it, it just becomes normal to us. We don't even realize we're gaining that much. And then, 5 years down the road, we take the measurement and we're at the doctor's office and we're like, wow, I didn't know I was that heavy. So we get used to ourselves, what we look like, how we feel, that kind of thing. So I found that it has become a really, really good motivator for me. So I do it monthly. If you do it more than monthly, then, you don't want to get so fixated on this that it becomes ridiculous. I know I've heard of one person who was extremely overweight, and he got help and went to some places that helped him lose his weight, and he got to a really good weight. He found that his motivator was he actually weighed himself every day because it helped him to know what he should eat, how he should eat that day. And he's been able to keep his weight down for years, okay, because he was, he ate out or had a party the day before, and so the next day he just is more moderate in what he eats, eat more fruit, or, pays attention that way. For me, that would not be a motivator. I think I'd be discouraged because I'm like, oh my goodness, I gained from this, So for me, the month by month is much better. So keep track of those for you. That's very helpful. Okay, so your formula for success is to track it on a monthly basis, eat less at every meal, and exercise more every day. Just eating less would make a difference. Just exercising a little more would make a difference. And you wouldn't even have to change anything else, okay? You might want to, but you may not need to, okay? Let's look quickly at the eye evaluation. At this point, I'm going to not give Paul much time if I keep going like this. Okay, you can read this. This is a very quick eye exam. Okay, everybody look at this quickly. Okay, count the number of F's in this text as you read it. Okay, how many F's? I heard 2, 3, 4. She saw 4. You saw 5. You're thinking 5? 3. She only saw 3. Okay. Okay, read it again. No, just finished files, just that one. There's 6. So this is more of a mental thing than a health thing, or than an eye thing in a way, but think about it, okay? So here's the theory that most people see 3, okay? So what happens is the brain does not process the word of. The word of, the letter F usually makes a f sound in the word, like fox, but the word of has a V sound. So we quickly go through it and we hear it in our head, V, we don't count it. Anyway, just something fun to wake you up. Okay, we're awake now, let's go. Okay, everybody looked at this chart yesterday. It's called the Snellen eye chart to check out with 20/20 vision. So what happens is with that particular chart, you need to be 20 feet away, okay? And so that's how we measure. So 20/20 is considered the perfect vision, so to speak, okay? Okay, so we're looking at the measurement. It measures the sharpness of your sight at 20 feet to see what of an object, okay? So our object was the chart, okay? So if you have 20/60 vision, it means you have to be 20 feet to see what a person with normal vision can see at 60 feet. So they can be farther away than you. Okay, so that's, Snellen came up with this 20/20, or with this Snellen eye chart rather, okay? So basic eye chart we did, okay? Basic test. We don't know actually what your peripheral vision is, what if you see colors, what your depth perception, we don't know any of that with this. So you need to actually get better checked than what we did. But it's interesting, I discovered that if a person cannot see with both eyes the E at 20 feet, it has to be with both eyes, they would be considered legally blind. Okay, so it's not just one eye or the other, it's just both eyes. And some of you noticed, or I don't know if I know someone was looking at the chart here at first before we started the testing, and they were looking with both eyes, and they were 20/20. Okay, but when we changed it to one eye and the other eye, one eye wasn't and one eye was. And so when you're seeing with both eyes, it's fine. We did it with glasses because that's all we need to know is how good are your glasses or how good are you without glasses if you don't wear them, okay? So it's interesting. Let's look a little bit about the importance of keeping your eyes in good shape. You should see an eye doctor at least every couple of years. For the general population, as we get older, we should probably go every year, okay? If you have sudden vision loss, eye pain, or irritation, you should go and see the doctor right away because possibly you had something happen in your eye that if you have immediate help, you will actually be able to save that eyesight. Sometimes if you don't and you wait, it'll go away, then you might be in trouble and not get back. If you have a health problem, especially diabetes, you should actually go very more regularly to see an eye doctor. Okay, let's look at adult vision 19 to 14. Generally, people have healthy eyes and good visions in that age range, okay? Most of the eye problems here is eye stress, which is even more so today because of, phones and iPads and computer work and all that kind of stuff. So eye stress and injury are the most problems for this age group, okay? We should be protecting our eyes at any age group, but this is what they particularly were saying for the 19 to 40s, okay? Protect your eyes from short wavelength visible light, protect the eyes from sun, don't smoke, eat a balanced diet, get regular exercise. Does this sound like does this sound like our laws of health? This is just for the eye. Isn't that amazing how it all fits together? It's actually very exciting to me, okay? What happens at work? We have to think about maybe you're working in an area where you might have splashes with chemicals, grease, and oil. You might have burns from steam, might be ultraviolet, infrared radiation exposure. Maybe there's flying wood or metal chips. What about at home? Cleaning the oven with, question. We had a question. Oh, sorry. Oh, so they gave you a different lens to make you look different. No. Isn't that interesting? Yeah, sometimes that happens. Sometimes that happens. That's very interesting. And some people put those kind of contacts in on purpose to make different color eyes. Did you know that? Yeah. So that makes people really confused. Oh, I'm sure it doesn't have anything to do with what I said. I was just teasing you. I don't know. It would be interesting to ask the next time you go for your checkup. I would be curious on that. Okay, what are the problems at home? Cleaning the oven, if you're still cleaning the oven with chemicals, could be a significant eye injury. Chopping wood, doing woodworking, using power tools, lawn trimmers. So if you're wearing, you make sure you have goggles or a mask on, or I guess those covering mask things. Face shield, that's it, thank you. How about jump starting a car battery? That's actually a problem too. Could be a problem, okay, because of the battery acid, okay? And at play, what could happen at play? Of course, we know there's different sports with balls like baseball, football, hockey, even golf. If you're standing in the wrong place and you get hit in the eye, that could be a problem, right? Racket sports. So these are things we still have to think about for maintaining good eyes. Okay, maybe the main population here is 60 years of age or older. So changes are just going to naturally occur because we live in a sinful world, but it doesn't have to affect our lifestyle if we're really careful in what we're doing, okay? So what are the problems for this age group? Macular degeneration, cataracts, okay? Diabetic retinopathy, okay? If you have diabetes, you have to pay attention to that. Dry eye, glaucoma, retinal detachment, that kind of thing, okay? So that's why if something happens suddenly to you, maybe you had your retina detached and you lost your vision, you need to go right away to get checked, okay? Did you think I'd bring this in? Tips for driving safely because we have to use our eyes for driving, okay? After 60, use caution at intersection, more caution. Well, have you ever watched teenagers drive? They should be watching and having more caution also, but regardless. For over 60, we need extra caution because we won't focus or see things as quickly with someone trying to cross the street or another car driving. Reduce our speed, limit ourselves to maybe daytime driving. I know that I've heard people say, Paul's brother in particular, we're visiting his niece and they head off home before the sun goes down because they've decided they don't want to drive after dark. Okay. Avoid wearing eyeglasses or sunglasses that have wide frames, okay, or big temples, because that can restrict what we see. Okay, so pay attention to that if you're still driving. How about just taking a safety course again? I mean, we've been driving for years. We know how to drive, right? Nobody can tell me how to drive. I've been doing this forever, okay? Maybe we should have a course because it would just remind us of things that we know, or they'll give us a little bit more information for our age. And again, have the annual eye exam. Okay, I think that's the end of mine. Oh no, vision loss, one more here. Sometimes people over 60 will lose their sight or lose portions of their sight, okay? So what are some of the other visual factors? They might be able to see well enough even to drive, but they have poor depth perception, so stairs are difficult for them, or stepping over a rug could be a problem, okay? Limited side vision, what they see beside them. Maybe they're extremely sensitive to lights and glare. Sometimes they can't see colors as well, okay? So if there's low vision or beginning loss of vision, there are rehabilitative services out there to get some help so that people can stay more independent, okay? And they can, they're taught how to do some of their daily living chores with ease and not be fearful of losing a little bit of that vision. So it's not a bad thing, it's something to watch, but it's something that we can take care of as years go on.
When we read in the Bible that we are connected with every mind, body, soul, and so on, you start to understand that one thing affects the other very quickly here. Our son Jordy said that the biggest person he ever had to work on in the hospital was 750 pounds. They brought him in the back of a half-ton truck. And he said he was the nicest guy. He was about 26 years old. And they released him from the hospital, and he was back in about 2 weeks and passed away. It's a sad story, he said, to see this. And so when you consider weight and these factors, they're really critical in how they affect us and can affect us in negative ways. We have a very fast food industry. We did some health lectures overseas here recently, and at this particular place where we were, they had absolutely every fast food available to them. Now, I encourage you to eat as much fast food as you can. That's fruits and vegetables that are fresh. They're very fast. You don't have to do anything with them. You don't even have to open the bag. Okay, just wipe it off, eat it. If we take a bowl of cornflakes and a bowl of salted peanuts, there is more salt in the cornflakes than there is in the salted peanuts. So one of the things we're going to talk about here is blood pressure. And so this number has changed, as I mentioned yesterday, over the years. It used to be that you could have higher blood pressure and kind of get away with it. So elevated blood pressure is when the reading is consistently in a range from 120 to 129 on the systolic. And so you have to kind of figure out where you are on this and where you're going to score on this. They like to see it 120 over 80. Luis is here. He might want some bragging rights or something, I'm not sure. Talk about a little bit about hypertension stage 1. That is when the blood pressure is consistently 130 to 139 on the systolic and 80 to 89 on the diastolic. So the systolic number, that's the big number. That is the pressure on the arteries when the heart is contracting. The diastolic is when the heart relaxes. If you have a high systolic number, and we encourage you to do this blood pressure a few times, but a high systolic number typically could be from a chronic problem, or it could be an acute problem. The acute problem could be something that you're just stressed about. Maybe you exercised. They had a bit of an anomaly with me on a treadmill a while back because my diastolic would go down with exercise, significantly down. And but the systolic would go up at a regular rate. I have the opposite problem of most people. I have low blood pressure. In fact, it's annoyingly low at times, so I have to kind of take care of that I don't feel kind of woozy. Now, does that mean I should go out and eat a bunch of salt? No, there's harm to the kidneys for that. The physicians don't worry about that too much, which I'm pretty much glad about. They don't. When I start to see it 90 over 50, then I start to feel a little funny. And so I have to just back off for a while, and it's okay. So with these indicators that you have, hypertension stage 2 is 140 over 90. So we'll look at this in a little more detail as to where you are with all of this. And we talked about what the high and the low is. Basically, you want to check it and track it. Some of you talked to me about the fact that yesterday it was just higher than normal or whatever. That might have been just you were going crazy trying to do something, get here, stress of the meeting, whatever it might be. Maybe don't worry about that too much unless you get it there consistently. So the group blood pressures here is, again, there were 11 people who had blood pressures that were not within normal limits, at least one of the numbers, 11 out of the 19. Now, I'm not overly concerned about that unless those numbers are consistently in that range. Have it checked at least 3 to 5 times, and if you're going to do it on the same arm, wait 5 minutes in between. I went in to have a check at the doctor, and I said, which side do you want to do it on? They said, which do you prefer? I said, well, my blood pressure ranges 5 points different to 10 points different on the left arm than the right arm. And they're like, really? I said, yes. And sometimes they'll do it on the leg. I mean, it really depends, yeah, where they do it. So note which number is consistently high and talk to your healthcare provider. So here you can kind of see the chart. And you can see that this is normal here, the 120/80. You know, you say, well, 129 isn't that bad. And it used to be that they said, the older you are, it's acceptable to go higher. Yes, it is. I had a cousin who farms and was also in farming real estate. And I met him on the street one day, and the Lehman family have typically higher blood pressure than they should have. I'm on the opposite end, as I mentioned. He had high blood pressure. The only thing he changed in his life that dropped his blood pressure down to normal was stop drinking pop. That was it. And it, I mean, the caffeinated ones are a problem because caffeine will boost your blood pressure. That's just a reality. But because it's a constrictor, it's a vasoconstrictor. So if you are in this 120 to 129, just kind of adopt a healthy lifestyle. This isn't really anything to worry about too much. Some people are genetically high, but you have to still keep an eye on it because high blood pressure is considered the silent killer. You really don't know when you have it. It doesn't, like your head doesn't explode, your eyes don't blow up or anything like that. It just happens. So, oh, sorry, we'll back this up here. So if it's 130 to 139, 80 to 90, this is stage 1, and then 140 to or 90 on the diastolic, this is stage 2. So I'm going to put this into perspective as you see these numbers. We were on the street in California doing blood pressures, free blood pressures for people, and a guy came in and I did his blood pressure. And he says, take it again. So I took it again. He said, that's wrong. I said, well, I'm sorry. That's what I got. I wrote it down. He says, well, you're wrong. I said, no problem. He says, I do not have high blood pressure. So he said, I'm going to my physician. And his physician was 2 blocks down the street. He walked in there, and this guy had the courage to come back to me and say, I want to thank you because I did not know I do have high blood pressure. You were right. So he did something about it. We did a service project in Swaziland, which is now called Eswatini. Very tall, slender lady came in. I think we took her blood pressure 5 times, 3 times electronically, twice auditorily, waiting sequentially for enough time within. And it was unbelievable what her blood pressure was. I think it was 220, 110. That is really high. A lady came to me one day when we were doing stress tests on the treadmill, and she said, I want you to test my mother because I think there's something wrong. It seems like she might have high blood pressure. I said, well, I will test her, but if she has high blood pressure, our protocol is do not test if the blood pressure, even at rest, is above this level. She says, well, I want you to test her. So she had to walk up the stairs to actually get to the treadmill. Sat down, let her rest, took the blood pressure. Her resting blood pressure was about 180 over 110. I said, do you really want to do this test? She said, yes. I said, well, the first is about 3 kilometers an hour, 3.2 kilometers an hour at a 10% grade. and we'll take the blood pressure during this time. So we did that. It went up to 240 over 130. And I said, no, we're not doing anymore. You need to sit down. I immediately sent her to a physician that I knew, and he came to me later and talked to me and also to the mother and said if she had not come in, she would have been dead in about 10 days. She lived for another 12 years. She lived well into her 80s as a healthy person because there was a physician previously that had told her, your blood pressure is fine. And maybe on that day it was. I have no idea. But it clearly was not when she went in to see the physician that I told her to see. So lifestyle is a true factor here. Stress, chronic stress, decrease your salt intake, exercise. If there's anything I want you to think about that helps virtually everything in your life is exercise. Some type of exercise. We'll talk more about that coming up. Do your push-ups away from the table. Lose weight, reduce your stress, trust in divine power, stop the use of tobacco and alcohol. One of the gentlemen that lived in the town where we are, he owned a hardware store. He did a fitness test with me, and then he stayed in the fitness class, and he said, I said, don't you want to live a healthier life? And his answer was classically sad. He says, this world is a pretty bad place. Do I care to live any longer? And I said, but don't you want a quality of life while you're living? And he had not thought about that. You know, because if I can walk to my grave, I'd be the happiest person. That I am not debilitated before I get there, I think is something to think about. So here's a few statistics from Canada. 19% of the adult population in Canada have high blood pressure. In the US, it's 46%. Now, Newfoundland is right around the Canadian level. We checked this out. The US is up 46% from the 32. 17% are unaware that they have a condition, and only 66% have it treated or under control. So it is a silent killer. And 1 in 3 of those would have normal blood pressure if they didn't eat so much salt. But it's in the processed foods, right? It's there, it's there, it's there, it's there. It's all over the place. Kellogg's Corn Flakes has more salt in it in Canada than it does in the U.S. because the U.S. demanded that they have less. So when you've got to read the labels wherever you go. Women with high blood pressure have a 3.5 times greater risk of developing heart disease. And then this little web page, this is actually getting the blood pressure under control is a really good website. Let's talk a little bit of resting heart rate. Because your resting heart rate on there is totally bogus. It's what we wrote down is what we saw. The reason I say it's bogus is because maybe you did the hand grip before you did the blood pressure test. Well, things happen, right? Or you were walking around chasing kids or yelling at somebody or happy about something, so the heart rate goes up. So this should be counted in the morning before you get out of bed, before the alarm clock throws you out of bed. If you take it at the carotid, just use 2 fingers here. On one side, not both. Do not use your thumb. If you push in with both fingers, there's pressure receptors in here. It'll actually increase your heart rate. I had a student in my first aid class. He said, something's wrong. This person's heart rate is 300. I says, how did you take it? He says, well, I said, well, first of all, if you come to a person like this at their throat, That's probably not the best. The other thing is, you pressed in on both sides and you counted your pulse and their pulse because your thumb has a pulse. Oh, he says, I'm so relieved. I says, well, I think they probably are too, because our maximum heart rate is 220 minus our age. So if you're 20 years old, it's 200. If you're, 50, it's down to 170. That indicates how much you should possibly exercise, and we'll talk about exercise as well. If you take it here, it's very difficult to find on some people, but these two fingers on the radial side or the thumb side, push in there, and you should be able to count it. And resting heart rates with people vary significantly. So another story to share with you here is we've done fitness testing in many, many places, including Newfoundland. We had the STEP test here many, many years ago, the Canada Fitness. Canada Fitness, Steve Thomas was the guy that worked with Canada Fitness, the government of Canada. I talked to him many times. He got all these standardized stuff because they tested well over, I think, 100,000 people to get these standards. They are way above ahead of many countries in these standardizations that they have. We were testing in the Northwest Territories, and they said, we will fly your equipment there, we'll fly the treadmills there, we'll fly the electrocardiograms there, we will get all of this there for you. And we will do it free if you test all of our pilots. I said, deal, done. I have no idea what Northwest Territories church there or whoever organized that all paid for it all, but I said, you can't get a better deal than that, right? So we started testing, and a guy came in, very tall, well-built native guy. And now the treadmill test, typically there's 7 stages, but usually you go through 5 stages. But you only go to 85% the max heart rate. So if this person is 20 years old, we're going to go to 85% of 200. This guy was in his 30s, maybe, or early 30s. And I rarely took anybody into stage 5, let alone stage 6 or 7. That just didn't happen. Usually we were done by stage 2, 3, maybe. This guy was like a walking machine. Every time, and this is what you do, every 3 minutes you increase the elevation and you increase the speed. And what you want is the heart rate to go up and then flatten, go up, flatten, go up, flatten. This guy, every time we'd increase and give him increased workload, and that's really a part of fitness, his heart rate would go up, go up, blood pressure just as steady as could be. I get through stage 5, and I'm still not, I'm aiming on him, I'm aiming at about 170, 175 heart rate is what I'm aiming for. He's at 167 at the end of stage 5. The treadmill is overheating. Like it is just, this guy's grinding it out. I said, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to extrapolate here approximately what your oxygen uptake is, which is incredibly high. That means the utilization of the oxygen in the body during exercise. And then we take a 2-minute recovery, and I said, I think we got him up to 167. Treadmill was too hot. I said, I'm going to have to sit you down, do a 2-minute recovery. So he's at 167. Get this, his 2-minute recovery is back down to 62. Incredible. Don Lee is the frontline person here in the Yellowknife, doing similar stuff that what you did here, except we were doing the full exercise test, electrocardiograms, the whole 9 yards. And we are now running behind because this guy is way longer than he should be, right? Which is a good thing. I like this. And so in comes, and Yellowknife is a little bit like Newfoundland. People aren't very stressed as far as gotta go, gotta go, gotta go. They're pretty relaxed, but an accountant came in. Now, I'm not trying to do any stereotype here, but he was anxious. He wanted to get through, and she's trying to hold the fort. We'll be in there soon. Don't worry, we'll be in there soon. And finally he says, okay. He says, I'm just going to relax. He says, I'm going to tell you a story. He said, and he was a slight guy, not particularly tall. And he said, I was here before. Because I don't know, how many times did we go? 2 or 3 times? And he says, I was here before, and I want to see if I'm better or not. He said, so I've trained with a Finnish distance runner. And Donnelly says, well, how'd that go? He says, well, it's Finnish distance runner. Went all right, but it's Finnish distance runner. Like, I thought I was kind of fit. He said, this guy, he ran the 2,000 meters in an Olympic heat. So heats are just qualifiers, right? You don't have to perform your best in an Olympic heat. It's just a qualifier. I'm going to open that door. People are dying of heat stroke in here, I think. And so anyways, he said at the end, he set a world record in an Olympic heat. His heart rate went up to 175. His 3-minute recovery, not the 2-minute recovery, was in the 40s, and his resting heart rate, get this, his resting heart rate is 28. It's like, are you living? You know, if you take the pulse of this guy. So it's amazing what a level of fitness can do for people. And this isn't something that you have at once and it goes on. You have to do something about it. So the resting heart rate, we want to get that as low as we can. Do it in the morning before you get out of bed. This is going to be hard to read, so I'm going to read these to you. I'm going to change all these slides away from this black. So these are the factors that affect heart rate. Age, your level of fitness, your activity. Do you have cardiovascular disease? Diabetes, high cholesterol, overweight, your emotions, your stress, your body size, coming back, full circle here, medications, health habits such as smoking or alcohol. So I'm going to go back to this native that we tested on the treadmill. After I finished with him, I said, okay, you have a VO2 uptake here that's incredible. You have the efficiency of a small diesel engine with the power of a Peterbilt. I said, I told him that. I said, I just was amazed. I said, I looked at all your questions that you answered on this, and I said, I'm having just a bit of a mental disconnection here of why you scored so high on this. I said, you say you play a little basketball, a little hockey. He says, yeah. And I have a lot of Native friends, grew up with them, and they don't say much unless you ask them directly. I said, so what is it? He says, well, I answered the questions. I said, okay, fair enough. What do you do for a living? Oh, he says, you didn't ask that. I says, no, but I'm asking you now. I really want to know what you do. Well, he says, I'm a surveyor in the tundra. I carry an 80-pound pack 6 days a week, 7 hours to 8 hours, 9 hours a day. I said, okay, that explains it. It totally explains it. In Nepal, when we did the hikes up in the Annapurna area, we had porters that were with us. The average age that a porter lives to is 32 and a half years of age. And one of the porters that was carrying one of the packs, he was a little guy. I said, can I lift you? So I grabbed a hold of him, lifted him up, and then I lifted his pack. His pack was heavier than he was. He was about 130 pounds. The pack was about 135 pounds on a tump line in a basket. And I'm carrying a camera and a water bottle. I cannot keep up to these guys, and half of them smoke. And they wear flip-flops or barefoot. And I'm like, are you guys crazy? He says, this is the only way we can make a living. I said, you're killing yourself. And they were. They were killing themselves. They said, we have nothing else to do. We have to make a living. So you can go overboard with some of this as well. So what are your scores here on this? On the hand grip strength. These are gender and age related. So are higher scores always better? Do you think a higher score is always better on hand grip strength? She's not going to commit to anything here. Any other thoughts on this? You say because I'm asking the question, it's a trick question, right? Being a teacher, that's possible. Well, actually, contrary to blood pressure scores, higher scores are always better unless it's drug-induced. Now, if you have a person who's on crack cocaine, they're going to blow these things right off. So I don't know what you ladies were on yesterday, but you scored very well, which is very good. So the group scores here, the females, we're going to give this in percentiles because that's really more meaningful than the score, because the raw score is different for age, was at the 50th percentile. Note that the females had a younger average age than men. The male score, the mean was 66.2%. Okay, so the highest female score, this is the raw score, was 76.5 at the 93rd percentile, and the male was 134 at 100th percentile. So we decided we better test ourselves to see where we're at here, because this is very directly related to mental function, actually, which is very interesting. And we found out that we were both at the 95th percentile. Now, I wasn't particularly happy with that because I think I could do better. And so some of the things that you want to do, how does this, and this relates to the factors include. This is a clinical nutrition, the association between sarcopenia, obesity, and dementia. So in other words, sarcopenic obesity is a certain type of deep fat obesity. And those people that have that and have low hand grip strength also have a much higher rate. This is a Japanese study that will get dementia. Hand grip strength less than 28 kilograms for males and 18 kilograms for women indicates this issue. So day-to-day factors become more difficult. In other words, the hand grip, everything from opening jars, carrying groceries, buttoning your shirt, getting out of the chair, all of these things become increasingly more difficult as you lose the ability to grip. Now, there could be injury factors, disease factors, any of these factors could be involved with this. So a 2018 study shows the better hand grip, that hand is not spelled right there, was associated with cardiac structure and function. And so if you look at this, hip fractures, cognitive changes. This is why if you connect in any way with research, money is being thrown at anybody who is studying the mind with stress, with mental function, Alzheimer's, degenerative diseases of the mind. And the studies are coming out here that people need to exercise the arms as well as the legs and the heart, because this helps increase cognitive function by doing this, by doing some type of curls, gardening, whatever it may be. So it has a lot to do with everything from sleep problems, depression, diabetes, all of these things. There's a hand grip relationship. People used to think, well, this is just a fun test to do, and it was a fun test to do. Now, does that mean that you who scored high don't get this? Not necessarily, but you have helped to diminish the possibility and keep it going, I think, is the important factor here. Low grip strength is associated with overall strength, physical limitations, thinking problems, bone mineral density, osteoporosis, hip fractures, heart health, and this is interesting. A 16% increase in deaths from any cause, 17% increase in heart disease, 9% increase in stroke, and a 7% increased risk of heart attack. That is just grip strength, because it's related to how much little else we probably do. Now, what do you do to help yourself? I'm going to go through these rather quickly because we have 2 forms for you to fill out here. So everything from lifting, going upstairs, gardening. Interestingly, you know, science is slowly catching up to Ellen White. Slowly. Ellen White always said, get out there, do gardening, chop wood, do whatever. And they are now saying, why don't people get out and dig their gardens? Use, bend, push, twist. You talked about snow this morning. You could shovel lots of snow here in Newfoundland. We have our own share there. Use a push lawnmower, walk with the walking sticks, and do any of these things that you can. Do them carefully. So these are the 2 questionnaires that we want you to fill out before you leave today. Do not take them with you.